place. The next gentleman who's stepping up has made sure that his company is very much in the public view. Ruchi Soya Group of Industries enjoys top-of-the-mind recall in the Indian public, and in the last few years, its growth has been dramatically robust, and which has not been in a small measure due to its dynamic and very charming managing director. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to request the managing director of Ruchi Soya, Mr. Dinesh Shahra, to please step forward and deliver his address.
Ms. Adi Godrej, members on the dais, friends, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to address such a prestigious gathering. We are all here that these are not the best time for the global economic environment. Markets have tumbled around the world amid glooming assessment from the IMF and the World Bank. Growth in Europe has stalled. USA is grappling with sustained economic non-performance. Besides, Japan natural disaster coupled with high global inflation, spiraling fuel prices have de-accelerated global growth estimates. Overall, the future looks very uncertain. Amidst what can be termed as a fear of global meltdown, Asia appears to be a silver lining to the dark clouds. India, in particular, is considered as a promising destination, despite multiple challenges such as high interest rates, persistent inflation, government growing fiscal deficit. India Finance Minister, Ms. Pranab Mukherjee, have confirmed again that India will have 8% growth even under this climate. He believes that a good monsoon can ensure agriculture growth of over 4%. On the back of favorable monsoon and growing demand, India is indeed a promising market. The oil scenario globally and India represent a mix of opportunities and threats. At the global level, this year, the world production of 7 oilseed rose by 2.3%, and a record crop of 140 million tons in South America. Particularly, we saw Brazilian crop reached a record of 75.5 million tons. As for the coming year, the global production of 7 oilseed is expected to be almost the same as that of the previous year. It is expected that soybean production will decline from the last year production, and rapeseed crop also will decline. It is the first time that the production of these two most important crops is declining simultaneously. On the other hand, sunflower seed, cotton seed is expected to achieve a record production, and vegetable oil production shall be almost over 5 million tons higher this year. Now coming to domestic market, we are looking forward to a good harvest this year too. Thanks to the favorable monsoon, naturally, the import of edible oils in India shall decline as compared to the last year. This year, soybean oil import reduced by almost 40% due to lower prices palm oil, and at the same time, sunflower oil import rose by almost 32% and crude palm oil by 6%, over 6%. India, with its billion-plus population and aspirational high-end earners, is witnessing a major surge in food demand. The country is considered among the leading consumers of edible oils globally, with a 9% CAGR in consumption over the preceding 5 years. The trend is expected to sustain over the next 10 years. Food and edible oil segment has thrown open an attractive window of opportunities. As we are all aware, India refining industry is facing one of the most difficult challenges posed by the changes in export tax regime on the palm oil by Indonesia. I'm hopeful that the government of India will protect the domestic industry by making appropriate changes in the import tax policy on refined palm oil. Our Honorable Minister of Food and its ministry have come forward to support us in this cause. In any case, the Indian industry is resilient and has successfully tackled similar issues with Sri Lankan Vanaspati exports in the past. I am sure that together we can sail through the present turbulence and achieve greater success. Allow me to conclude by narrating a famous Hindi saying which best explains my thought. सोच को बदलो सितारे बदल जाएंगे, नज़र को बदलो नज़ारे बदल जाएंगे। कश्तियाँ बदलने की ज़रूरत नहीं, कश्तियाँ बदलने की ज़रूरत नहीं, दिशाओं को बदलो किनारे बदल जाएंगे। For all of your friends, be positive, you will be the winner. Thank you.
That was the Managing Director, Ruchi Group of Industries, Mr. Dinesh Shahra. Vision is important. And ladies and gentlemen, the speaker who next steps up to the podium is a man with great vision, with a company that has products ranging right from soaps and toiletries to industrial equipment to real estate. They touch almost every second Indian's life every day. And ruling over that empire with great elan and finesse is this gentleman who is the president designate for the Confederation of Indian Industry. He truly needs no introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, our chief guest, Globoil India 2011. Please welcome Chairman Godrej Group of Industries, Mr. Adi Godrej.
Thank you. All my friends, dignitaries on the dais, dignitaries in the audience. It's a great pleasure to be here. As soon as I arrived here, I met a lot of old friends, and our group's involvement with the vegetable oil industry continues strongly. And to speak here to you at the inaugural function is a great pleasure and a privilege. The program says, is India's growth story derailed? Before I start, I'd like to say with an emphatic no. It's not derailed anywhere at all. As you all know, growth in the developed world is likely to be slow over the next few quarters. After having recovered somewhat, growth has been affected. To my mind, partisan politics in many of the countries of the developed world is preventing them from taking decisions, perhaps tough decisions, which need to be taken to ensure that a reasonable growth in the developed world of 3 to 4% is restored. This partisan politics spreads, to my mind, across Europe, the United States, and I see it increasingly in India too. We have too many politicians in the world and too few statesmen. India will certainly be affected by this global slowdown, no doubt about it. But we would need to counter this global slowdown by taking prompt, smart, and important steps that can counter them. I must compliment our government on our responses when there was the global financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. We took some very good steps in fiscal and monetary stimulus, which helped India grow reasonably well. The lowest growth we had in any quarter at the time of crisis was 6.3%, which is not bad when the world was really reeling. So we need to similarly take the right steps in the near future. We will, fortunately, our economy is not very globalized yet. So we'll have to concentrate on increasing our share of the goods and services export, even if the global economy slows down a bit, which I'm sure we can. Imaginative and forward-looking policies will be required. We will benefit, if the global economy does slow down, we will benefit from lower commodity prices, as we did last time the global economy slowed down. But we'll have to be careful. I see a tendency, sometimes irrational, of our currency losing value whenever the global economy slows down. It has happened in other developing countries too. We need to be clear that that is not in our interest. Currency depreciation, large currency depreciation will lead to further inflation. The Chinese have handled this well. The yuan has not depreciated, even in the last few weeks when other developing countries have depreciated. I expect that the distraction we had in this country from our reform program, from our economic program, because of the civil society protests against lack of transparency and probity and against corruption, that slowdown in the reform process, perhaps we are at the end of it. The anti-corruption agitation itself, to my mind, I look upon it as short-term pain but long-term gain. It will lead to increasing transparency and probity in government. It will lead to lower levels of corruption. Hopefully, it will lead to more transparency and less case-by-case decision-making in the government. That itself can add economic value. And hopefully, to avoid petty corruption, to avoid difficulties that the populace faces, we will, in course of time, put a lot of the transactions people have to do with the government, local, state, or central government, in an e-enabled format. That can reduce petty corruption very considerably. A major reform that India is contemplating, it has been in the works for a while, is the goods and services tax. That legislation, as and when it is brought in, will add about 1.5 to 2 percentage points to India's GDP growth, other things being equal. It also, that legislation can help us solve a lot of our macroeconomic problems. So what will happen is that because tax on tax gets eliminated, most consumer products, prices will fall by about 5 percentage points, around that level. That will lead to higher consumption, higher production, and therefore very strong GDP growth. At the same time, government revenues would increase because under the new tax, evasion of taxes, which is quite prevalent in India, will become very difficult. Government revenues will rise, fiscal deficit will be contained, inflation will be contained. So it is an extremely important legislation for us to get through. It has been delayed because, again, as I mentioned earlier, political differences has derailed this legislation, but I think the government has taken a very wise step in appointing one of the major leaders of the opposition, the Deputy Chief Minister and Finance Minister of Bihar, Sushil Kumar Modi, as the chairman of the states panel, which is looking into the implementation. And he has himself mentioned that he is quite hopeful of putting this legislation through sometime in 2012. The new manufacturing policy, which has been drafted, which envisages that the salience of manufacturing in Indian GDP should rise from the present 16% to about 25% in 10 years' time. And there are several steps they wish to take in this direction which should help manufacturing. Even if we don't achieve these lofty goals, even if we come close to them, this will help growth in India tremendously. The export policy, which is replacing the earlier policies, also have been announced. Some of them, some more are to be announced. That will help. A very important step the government is taking. As you all know, we have a new Competition Act passed that will help ensure that competition in Indian business, in Indian industry, remains strong. But more importantly, to my mind, the government is now evolving what is known as the competition policy. It is work in progress. It is expected to be announced in a few months' time. What this competition policy intends is to ensure that all government policy, all government acts, all government legislation promote competition. Currently, a lot of policies of the government tend not to promote free competition, free enterprise. And this new policy will ensure that that takes place. That, to my mind, will help Indian growth quite considerably. The great story in India over the last few years has been the growth in the rural economy. There have been large increases in discretionary income in rural India. Just about 15 years ago, there was very little discretionary income in rural India. Most people's earnings went just to keep body and soul together. Now discretionary incomes are rising, and that is leading to very rapid growth in the consumption of many items, both durables as well as daily items. Services consumption in rural India is also rising. Schemes such as NREGA are helping. If you look at what good policies can do in rural growth, I would suggest take a look at what is happening in the state of Gujarat. For the last several years, agricultural growth in Gujarat has been around 9–10%, which is a very high level of agricultural growth with good policies that can be achieved in more parts of India. So I think the rural economy has displayed strong growth in the near past and can display continued growth in the future. a very important development in India, not just in the rural areas, but also the urban areas, is a great emphasis now on skill development. In India, I like to say that there is no unemployment. There is only unemployability. Anybody with a reasonable skill gets employed quite easily. So we need to ensure that our people get access to better education, better training, and better skill development. And of course, before I end, I'd like to allude to the fact that India has a great advantage of compared to almost all other large economies in the world, and that is our excellent demography. Our ratio of people who are in the age group where they earn to the age group, that is children and older people who have to be supported, is actually increasing. And we are about the only large economy in the world where that is taking place. Even in China, this demographic ratio is poor, and certainly so in Europe. The United States, of course, is not too bad, but Japan, as you know, has a very poor demographic profile. So India's demographic profile will certainly help her in her growth path over the next few years. So I would like to conclude by saying that I'm very optimistic in the future of the Indian economy. And of course, it does need strong policy, effort, and achievement by both the government and trade and industry. Thank you very much.
That was the Chairman, Godrej Group of Industries, Shri Adi Godrej, and we'd like to congratulate him in advance on being President CII. President designate now. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your presence here, and of course, your much looked forward to address. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time to thank our esteemed gentlemen on the dais for sharing their time with us here. Their very valuable time, I might add, by presenting them with a memento on behalf of the organizers and this occasion. May I first of request of TEFLAS, Mr. Kailash Singh, to jointly present a memento to the Managing Director of Ruchi Soya Group of Industries, Mr. Dinesh Shahra. Thank you, Mr. Sahara, for your presence here. May I now request the President of Solvent Extractors Association of India and the Chairman of the Organizing Committee Globoil India, Mr. Sandeep Bajoria, to jointly present a memento to the Chairman of Godrej Group of Industries, Mr. Adi Godrej.